venture, a great startup for Pakistan. And in the previous term, you did Daraz. Before that, you did SNL. So all these three, four things you did when you came back to Pakistan. My question to you is, from beginning from Baikia, when everything went down in a lockdown in this pandemic, and your operations completely got halted, you know, and everything came to a standstill. How did you maneuver your thought process, and also how did, when your revenue went down, your riders went out, your deliveries stopped, everything stopped, so you had no revenue, and then how did you cut down on your cost? If you could just elaborate on that.
Sure. First of all, thank you, EO Islamabad, and thank you, Hassan and Usman, for giving me an opportunity to be here. Just for those of you who don't know about what I do, I'll just give you a quick snippet before coming back to Hassan's question. So I run a network of motorbikes in Pakistan. You know, we're a very popular app, mostly in urban cities in the country. And when the lockdown was enforced, you know, all our motorbike drivers, the fleets were all sort of, you know, that whole category was suspended. Transport was the most impacted. Most of our business was pillion riding, which is motorbike taxi, getting from point A to point B. A part of our business was also deliveries, but essentially what happened is, and what continues to happen even today, is that most of our business is officially suspended, right? And if I circle back to your question, which was, you know, how do you react to basically your revenues going down and your business being significantly impacted? I think all of us need to, at some point, figure out how to reframe our business, right? Because business will not be, you know, at least for the next couple of quarters, what it was pre-COVID, right? So reframing what customers perceive our business to be needs to be advocated by you as leaders, right? And we try to do that as well. So for example, I'll give you an example, right? So we realized that pillion riding was suspended, and because there was a lot of hue and cry about people being close together, particularly for transport, you know, we did not, for the first 3 months, focus at all on even lobbying for pillion riding to be upended. You know, it would have been futile, right? It would have been a lost cause, really trying to even lobby for it to be upended or for it to be allowed, because it was just too sensitive. So what we did was we started lobbying a lot on our delivery side of the business, right? And what we went out to do is we actually started advertising in newspapers and saying, you know, use our services even as a state or as an NGO pro bono, right? And so why did we do that? Why would we basically you know, incur a bigger cost, right? Because when we're trying to offer things pro bono, essentially we're incurring a bigger cost. But the reason we did that was to be relevant, right? Your business needs to be relevant in good times, but also in bad times, right? And if you can't be relevant in bad times, then your brand will suffer, right? Your brand will suffer ultimately. So so basically, that's one part of what we did. But another sort of angle that we took to reframing was we started, we started to basically advocate for pillion riding to actually be safer relative to sharing a car. So who are our real competitors? Our competitors are ride-sharing businesses where people club together in a car and share recirculated air, right? And so we have recently started lobbying with the state to upend this suspension, this official suspension, because it makes no sense. Because on a motorbike, you're wearing a helmet, you've got this visor on, and if the pillion rider can also wear a helmet and a visor, that's a lot safer, and that sort of acts like a helmet, like a health visor, similar to how doctors wear a visor. and that's a lot safer than sharing recirculated air. For example, in Wuhan, the way sort of um, coronavirus really spread was actually through air conditioning, right? So we started lobbying that. And the reason I'm giving you these examples is you've got to think about all the reasons why your customer base or why regulators will not try to club your business down. You've got to think about those things, and you've got to preemptively think about them before anybody else does, and then start a PR campaign, really, making sure that you are defensible and you are relevant, even during a downtime.
Yeah. Well, like what you said, being relevant. The relevance of your business is very, very important. If you're a brand or you want to continue your name, going into a complete shutdown will just kill your brand. So you have to remodel and reframe your business in order to survive. I mean, I agree with you. Like if there's a pandemic and you panic instead of, sitting down and thinking rationally or
Yeah,
being
and I
creative.
think Hassan, you did this
Yeah,
as well, right? In your business, you went on the offensive as well. And I think Usman can also talk about this. I mean,
yeah.
Usman also went on the offensive. This is a time to go on the offensive as opposed to basically go into a retraction mode, regardless of what your internal situation is like.
Right. I mean, if you talk about myself, like when this thing happened, suddenly everything came to a standstill. When we're a manufacturer, and with all the payrolls and with supply chain coming in from all over the world, we had no choice. I mean, I had no choice. I had to step up and come into production. We got the permission from the government, from the provincial government, came into production with no dispatches, with no sale, with no turnover. But we said, okay, fine. We'll keep all our labor force, all our workforce. We do our production and build up the inventory for now. So when eventually we had this tough 1.5 month with just productions and paying off the supply chain, then we went into a sale mode for the COVID-19 projects. And at that time, we were ready because we had done the production in that time when everything was shut down. We had availability. So we got that step ahead. And also you can say a premium because we were able to snatch clients who could not work with other factories because they were shut down. So you snatched business from other factories or from other manufacturers just because you were at the forefront trying to manage your stuff. And I think initially it looked to me there was a loss. There's going to be a huge loss for my paying the payrolls and paying the supply chain. But eventually in the third month, it paid off, or I was broke even. And maybe Usman Shaukat, if you could also talk about you in the pharmaceutical business, how did you react to this pandemic when everything came to a standstill? I understand the pharmaceutical side and the medical devices side, and they were all the laboratories, the hospitals, they were at the forefront of this pandemic. You being the CEO of your company, how did you take up this pandemic from day one?
Yes, thank you. And absolutely, I agree with both of you that this pandemic is more of a reason for us to make this into a challenge. Like Munib said, rather than stepping back, we have to take 2 steps forward and just identify how we could grow our businesses and our entities. And that's exactly what we did as well. A lot of challenges were thrown our way, of course, with the lockdown. Globally happening. It was not just in Pakistan. A lot of the supply chains were hurt. A lot of the materials for the industry could not be brought in, while we were expected to maintain a supply chain of steady medicines for the patients. Of course, we were exempt from the lockdown, but being exempt doesn't mean that it was easy for us. We didn't have transport. We didn't have international transport, so we had to be creative. For example, chartering flights. We had never chartered flights, but that was something we learned. We got in touch with airliners in Dubai who were operating throughout the pandemic when the commercial flights were not. DHL was not. FedEx was not. These airliners came about and they were chartering flights all over the world. So depending on your need and the kind of medicine you wanted and the raw materials and the inputs, you could use their services, and we did, and the entire industry did. So I think that you have to be creative now. I mean, you have to ride out the storm, be creative. The pharma industry, has had to take a 180-degree turn. I mean, we make plans
Usman,
every
I
year.
want to ask you a question there, Usman.
Sure,
Like,
sure.
so So I mean, one thing that we realized was that traditional advertising was not going to work during this time, right?
Sure.
So I know that you also did a lot of like lobbying and PR, and so did we, right? This was a good time. In fact, we noticed that our recognition in front of regulators, in front of politicians, in front of decision makers, we built our brand up, in fact, because of the PR work that we did in the last 3 months. And it actually elevated our brand positioning a lot more than we would have pre-pandemic. So, I know that you also did a lot of lobbying and a lot of like PR work. So if you could talk a little bit about how you did that.
Sure. I mean, you see, we have to look at the regulators. I mean, this was a pandemic; it never happened before. So, like the private sector had to readjust, the regulators were in the same position. So you had to guide them in a lot of the ways because they truly did not know what needed to be done. So it had to be a partnership. I mean, what we did, for example, I'll talk about the medical devices industry. We had the N95 masks. We had the medical gloves that were being extremely short all over Pakistan. Black marketing was going on. There were price hikes across the board. And so we had to go to the regulators and explain to them that, look, you have to, in this pandemic, encourage local manufacturing of these imported products because you're going to have these issues. And immediately, overnight, we got issuances from FBR to import equipments for COVID-19 related products, duty-free, custom-free. That was not the case a month ago. And look what has happened today. We've gotten companies popping up, making N95 masks for the first time in Pakistan, making these Tyvek suits for the first time in Pakistan. Even the diagnostic kits are coming up for the first time. So, and another thing, we experienced price hikes, shortages and price hikes. Regulators did not know what to do about it. Hand sanitizers were an example. Pharmaceuticals were not manufacturing hand sanitizers. We went to the regulators and said, hey, look, if you have to get the quality, you have to make sure this product did not exist in Pakistan till February of 2020. The sales were non-existent. But now,
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How did you get permissions, and how did you sort of like beat competition to start making COVID-19 drugs in Pakistan before any of your competitors did? How did that happen?
Well, see, that sort of depends on your plannings. I mean, we saw a lot of the things happening. Back in March, we started on R&D on a lot of the products we were seeing. I mean, I'll give you an example. For example, there were successes and there were failures. I mean, we were looking at different products. I'll mention hydroxychloroquine. That was something that was going through the roof 2 months ago. Trump was talking about it. Everybody was talking about it. We built up stocks, but look where it is now. So that risk didn't pay off. But at the same time, we had some other products in the pipeline, like I said, the sanitizers, some other COVID-related products that we were foreseeing the need for these products. So we started the R&D, we started the trials, and look, institutions need products right now. Hospitals need them. NDMA needs them. So whoever goes to them first says, "Hey, look, I've got this." They will jump right at it. So it's all about planning. Like I said, disruption. There's a lot of disruption in the value chain. Every business is facing disruptions in the value chain, and you have to see how can you capitalize as an entrepreneur on that disruption. Your value chains are disrupted. That's not a point to discuss anymore. But you have to know how do you make that disruption in to come to your advantage.
Usman, go ahead, Munib. Go ahead.
No, I mean, so I mean, on the one side, we're saying we're being positive. We're going out and pitching. We're doing all of this, but let's also be cognizant, and I'll come back to your question, Hassan, which you asked earlier, which, what other measures you took. I mean, to be candid, like everybody else, we also really clamped down on our expenses. I think this was one of the few times which I think has sort of been an advantage where we actually really started looking at costs we never looked at. I mean, when you're growing, when are you looking at like minute, variable costs? You're really not. Right. And so while we were, putting up this face, and we continue to put up this face, to be candid, right, of essentially, being super aggressive, while at the same time, what we're also doing is we're really, really looking at our variable costs. I mean, for us particularly, we had huge dependencies on Google Maps, right? and we had huge dependencies on servers, right? And so we went out and started really identifying what are costs that we cannot reduce when cycles vary, right?
Mm.
And we went at them. We went at them and we said, if we don't make the expenditure now to
Yeah.
make them dynamic and make them variable now, it's never going to happen. Because whether it happens 2 months from now or 3 months from now, things are going to get better. Business is going to start booming. You'll have capital infused, but your leaky bucket will prevail. And so this is the best time to stop that leaky bucket.
Yeah, I mean, Munib, and also going back to Usman's efforts in COVID, you have to be dynamic. You have to take that extra cost as well to be creative. Let's say Usman went into sanitizers. That's got nothing to do with a pharmaceutical company, but he saw an opportunity and he took the approvals and he made that product. That wasn't something that that existed in his portfolio a few months back. Maybe going forward, it's going to be there. Similarly, hydrochloroquine, we all heard about it, and it was tweeted by Trump and everything. Everybody went on it and everybody sold that product, the people made money off it for at least 3 months, 3 good months. Now it's off the shelf. So there was a time when you made money off it. I mean, I agree with you, Munib, that the cost is there's a variable basically. You put in a cost, you make a product, you might get money off it, and then that product is gone. Then you have to shift to a new product. So you have to be, I think, dynamic. You have to have that. You have to be. You can be reluctant, but to a certain extent, you have to be flexible. You got to think about new ideas. You got to remodel your business.
One thing that we've done, and we're continuing to do, in fact, over the next few weeks, we're going to continue to do, is really, really look at whether we run as an efficient organization or not, right? Because listen, we don't know how long this is going to last. And clearly, basically, it's all of this is eating into our bank balance. There's no doubt about that, right? I mean, let's be candid. I mean, we are in the transport sector, right? And so this, whatever amount of capital that we have in our bank, it's diminishing by the day. And so if it's diminishing by the day till things get back to normal, right, then we need to be cognizant of where to become more efficient. So whether it is performance management, and I'd really encourage everyone not to lay people off just because you need to lay people off and send the message that, oh, we're cutting headcount. Right? I mean, you will lose your culture, you will lose credibility, you will lose your brand, right? But what you do need to do.
That was going to be my question to you, that you mentioned, of course, cost cutting and making your organization extremely efficient. Like you said, stop the leaking of the bucket. This is the right time to do that. But I had a challenge. And how did you deal with that? I would love to know. While trying to balance this leakage and making your organization efficient, you run the risk of losing, good people, HR. There were people that we had that we really didn't want to, we didn't fire a single person, but of course you had to bring down the pay scales. You had to sort of realign the pay scales depending on, for example, we had teams that went to doctors and worked in hospitals. Hey, hospital OPDs were shut for the last 2 months. Doctors' clinics were shut for the past 2 months. So we didn't lay them off, but we said, hey, we'll have to give you a lower price, pay cut, lower payroll at the end of the day, so you could be retained. And at the same time, once the things get better, you go out there and start working again. But you run the risk of losing, good people. How'd you balance that?
A couple of things, right? So I think what we're doing is we're doing a couple of things, right? So on the one side, we are actively recruiting, right? So if you go on our LinkedIn, we are actually actively recruiting top talent. Why are we doing that? Because this is actually the best time to gain attention for the best talent out there, right? Because if people know that you are looking for good talent during bad times, they trust you as a brand. That's one. The second thing is we need that talent. We need good talent once basically things get better. And this life cycle of recruitment is typically 2 to 3 months, right? So that's one. While simultaneously our Q1 performance management, so we typically try to trim the bottom 10% of our, of our headcount. And we typically try and do it in the first quarter of the year. We didn't do it this year. And the reason we didn't do it was because March, the lockdown happened, one, and two, Ramzan was starting, and it was just a bad time to lay people off, right? And so what we did was we went out and started cutting every other cost. We started delaying payables, right? So even if basically vendors were screaming, we said, we are first going to be loyal to our employee base, right? We're going to save all the money that we have to retain this culture that we have so that people respect this business and advocate us pre or post COVID. It doesn't matter, right? People should advocate us. So
that's a great point you're making, that while you're trying to maintain productivity in this pandemic, maintaining the culture of the organization is really important.
Yeah, but I'll add to that, so we will now, coming down to the second quarter of the COVID now, we will probably, get rid of the bottom performers who were supposed to basically get rid of in Q1. We will probably do it, right? But another thing that I'm doing and my leadership team is doing, we're taking significant pay cuts. So I have no reason to lay people off or to essentially trim headcount or ask for payroll cuts if I'm not going to take payroll cuts myself. So I went out and I'm publicly saying that I'm taking a greater than 50% pay cut. Could be 75% as well. Ultimately, unless people see me hurting, and me basically working for this business, they're not gonna love your business, right? So it's got to be me. It's got to be the leadership team. Everyone's got to be a part of it. Two, we also started really looking at real estate. We've got a lot of real estate that we were incurring a big cost on. We started figuring out one, do we need all this real estate? Particularly that a chunk of our workforce will perhaps continue for the next few quarters to work remotely, if not 100%, at least 50% of the time. So that's two. So there's an opportunity to cut headcount there. But I think most importantly, which is something that I would really recommend everyone to do, is to essentially up their game in terms of accountability. And Hassan, I know we were speaking about this a few days ago as well, right?
Right.
What we've done is, we know a lot of people are working from home, and we just, for example, installed Ding Talk. Ding Talk is a chat-based application that comes on a mobile device and comes on a desktop as well. It's owned by the Alibaba Group. It's free. It's free for any organization. And it's like a WhatsApp for companies. But what it does is it does 2-3 things. One, it consolidates email with chat. So you can have both emails coming in it and you can have chat coming in it. Free voice over IP calling, free Zoom type sessions and recordings. But most importantly, it has approvals, and it has, something that's important is that now we have raised the bar on accountability. So employees need no more, we don't care whether you're going on a smoke break or a prayer break. No, you are available. If you're at home, you're available, and you should be available, right? And our measurement around both performance and accountability has really gone up.
Yeah, Neeb, I agree with you. During this time when things are not working, the noise is reduced, things are not working at the optimal level, you do go into more accountability because you do want to know this XYZ person is performing or not. Before, when everything is going fine, that his performance is kind of hidden. It's there, but it's not that looked into. Now you want to make sure, that person is available, number one. Number two, you would want to redo the task. Let's say he was doing something else before. Like you said, we have to defer the payables so that we can save our business now, today, and the working environment and culture. So we get back running, and payables is the last thing on our head. That's something we will take care of if we save the business. The mental health of a leader who's running the organization and the drive he has, that has to stay intact for you to survive, for the culture to go on. So I think it's very important that you go into accountability. And then second, I agree with you that you need to also, I think one more thing that I would like to add is you also need to, divide the tasks and even the job responsibilities. You want to keep your employee, that's what we did. We kept our employees, we gave them different tasks. We gave them tasks that were like according to the COVID-19 situation, the pandemic, just to keep positivity. They might be that productive, but at least they're doing all they can during this time. As you said, there's a guy sitting at home and you're working from home, but he's available. So when you give him a task that you have to do this, he has to do that. He's
Yeah,
on
I'm
that.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so roles have evolved as you've reacted
Yeah.
to new steps that you've had to incur. But that doesn't mean that you can't measure that role. So, I mean, we have proactively started using Google Sheets as well. Why? Google Sheets can be accessed on a mobile device, right? So if I have tasked, let's say I've tasked employee A for something, I need him to essentially drop down in that sheet to intimate whenever he gets done, what level of completion there is, right? So that I don't have to like chase that employee to identify whether that task is done or not. I can go at my leisure, whatever time of the day or at night, pick up my mobile device and see, and sort of like have a dynamic CRM of sorts, or dynamic ERP of sorts, which allows me to get visibility on some of these new tasks that have been assigned. So I think, absolutely, people need to be retasked, but they also need to be measured against them. And, the accountability, of course, basically the bar on accountability goes up because, no one's watching them now, right? No one really cares whether they start work at 9 a.m. or whether they start work at 10 a.m. And I don't really care whether they leave at 5 p.m. or whether they're working at like 2 a.m. in the morning. It doesn't matter to me anymore, right? Because all that matters is what is your output, right? Now, of course, it's a lot easier for us as a services and a technology business to be able to do this. I'm presuming it's a lot harder in the sectors that you are in, right? But, almost everybody has a mobile device. And what I'm trying to basically suggest is if someone, even on your factory floor, has a mobile device, then they can very easily basically go in that mobile device within WhatsApp or another chat, click on a link and basically punch their status or their success, And I think everyone can do that. Because one thing that's happened with COVID is it has driven people more towards technology. I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation on Zoom right now, is novel, of course. But, it's funny that even my chauffeur or my driver, is also chatting with his loved ones on WhatsApp video. He wasn't doing this prior to basically COVID. It's not that he didn't have WhatsApp video in the past, he did, right? But the adoption of people gravitating towards leveraging technology tools, particularly mobile devices, is increasing. Okay? And so with that, unfortunately, I mean, of course, there are bad things about technology as well. That your mental sanity gets impacted because you're constantly barraged or interrupted by notifications or chats. But from an employer perspective, it also raises the bar on accountability and allows you the tools you need to essentially measure people as well.
Yeah. So Munib, coming back to your comments, and we spoke about it about a month back, that in your business, with COVID, your business is this is a bike and it's only this big, and with COVID, there's a new, SOP for social distancing. How do you, I mean, there's also a fare at the same time. You bulk of your business comes in from riders, who are going to be going from point A to point B. With COVID is not going anywhere right now. It's back in the US. Yesterday they had like 40,000 infections in one day. So this is a second wave that's come in. So it's going to come in Pakistan as well. How do you foresee that affecting your business? One, that fear of getting back to normal operation. How do you handle with that? And second, how will you do you see that model of your business? How do you plan to take up the riders, from moving from A to B, given the COVID precautions that have to be taken strictly in place?
Yeah, I think, listen, I think the opportunity is now bigger for the future. And I don't say that facetiously, right? And I'll be very candid about that. So short term, like you as layman would assume that, hopping on the back of a motorbike is more dangerous than sharing a car or getting in a bus or getting in a three-wheeler rickshaw.
Yes.
But that's not the case. And the reason it's not the case is that you have to recognize the history of motorbikers. Motorbikers have always worn helmets. They have a health visor on them. It's the same kind of health visor the doctors wear, right? They have also historically worn face masks. So it's not novel for them, Three, they've also historically worn gloves. They may not be plastic gloves. They may not be rubber gloves, but they've historically always worn gloves, right? So inculcating those safety measures in the driver are nothing new, right? It's like, you wearing a mask walking out of your house is more novel to like a driver of a motorbike wearing a helmet with a visor and wearing a mask and wearing gloves. So that's one. The second question is around pillion riding. I believe basically that one, it is an opportune time for the state to enforce people who are pillion riding, who are passengers, to carry their own helmets. Because if they carry their own helmets, they again provide themselves with health visors. And even though they may be in close proximity to another person, but the proximity is again going to be with another person with a helmet, right? As opposed to like going into a car and breathing the same recirculated air. A lot of people don't realize Wuhan. So the first spread of coronavirus happened in a restaurant. When somebody showed up at a restaurant who was in the wet market in Wuhan. But what happened is that the people who were facing the ventilation of the air conditioning right across the table of the person who's infected got infected. And other people in the restaurant who were not in this recirculated air or in the span of the air were not infected, right? So in actuality, and you're seeing this with ride sharing. Ride sharing in cars is dramatically down. It's 90% down. Ride sharing on motorbikes is only today about 60% down. So you are thinking of this from your mindset, when in reality, someone who's used to riding on a motorbike is thinking it's a lot safer. So that's one, Right. Two, the opportunity for deliveries and our logistics business just went up the roof, right? Like, we believe that we are better positioned to build and offer the technology for logistics more than any company out there, not even the big ones like Uber. And the reason is that we have been working on logistics tech for the past 3 years, right? So now suddenly, like, there's a bigger demand for something that we've been preemptively working on for a very long time. So if you're asking about opportunity, short term, it's painful. There's no doubt about that, right? We're struggling because we're struggling not because the market is responding as badly as we want it. We're struggling because the state has the same mindset, which is a mindset that, oh, these guys on motorbikes are more dangerous. And that's because they're sitting comfort and cushiony in their SUVs, but they're the ones who are getting infected because they're the ones who are recirculating the air. There's a higher probability of you getting COVID because of the lifestyle that you live.
Uh, Muneeb, if I were to ask you what was the biggest, opportunity you won during the pandemic? I mean, from the discussion we were having, it sounds like you're hooked onto new opportunities. You availed that extra market share in a different business along the same lines, using the same vehicle. What was the best opportunity you won out of this pandemic situation?
I'd say there were 3-4 opportunities. The first and foremost is basically relevance. Today, politicians, regulators, civil administrators, bureaucrats recognize us,
Yeah.
when they never even knew about us in the past. I mean, I'll give you an example. The Queen of England, who would have never heard of IKEA, just put up a post with IKEA drivers on her official page, appreciating the pro bono work that we did for one of the local foundations in Pakistan. Right? So the relevance that we've gained because of our aggressive PR initiatives is unparalleled. So that's the first thing. Okay? And a lot of people will say, well, you've been lucky. No, we have not been lucky. We have been very, very aggressively, directing our strategy towards advocacy, lobbying, PR, right, to win mind share. So that's the first and most important thing. The second is the gravitation of people towards technology. We believe that we are better positioned than most businesses to gain advantage of this near term, and long term as well, right? Because basically it amplifies or makes technologically savvy people who were historically reluctant, to do anything that was technology related, right? And the third and perhaps also important part is that we have taken this time to become healthier, right? I've become healthier, and we can speak about that later. But like as an individual, I think I'm a lot healthier today than I was 3 months ago, right? But I think as an organization as well, we have taken this time to get down and work on all the debt. We call it tech debt, but every company has debt. Debt is basically things that you owe your own business to, right? You owe your own business certain improvements, efficiencies, audits that we would never have taken a look at, right? We had been ignoring because we were booming or we were growing, right? And so essentially, I think all of these have been pluses. There's been many sort of negative impacts of COVID as well. But the reality is, listen, the world isn't going to end, right? People aren't going to stop moving. People aren't going to stop getting to work. It's not going to end, right? This will be over, right? The question is, did we utilize this downtime or not? Right? And I think that's the fundamental question every one of us needs to ask of ourselves, of our businesses. How will we look back and look at ourselves and look at our organizations? Did we come up to our own expectations or not?
Yeah, I agree. Muneeb,
I have to ask you, sorry, Hassan, I have to ask you, I mean, with all these changes and rapidly, evolving environment, how do you manage, do you see a family life? Personal life is really important for an entrepreneur. I believe your household, your family, that well-being is as important, in fact, even more important than your business, because if that's there, you're gonna succeed in your business as well. How do you see that changing in this pandemic?
I think our wives are a lot happier during the pandemic than they were pre-COVID. And the reason I say that is because what we have sacrificed is we have sacrificed our friends and we have sacrificed our social gatherings, right? And taken that slot of time and dedicated that slot of time for our immediate family. So I think if you ask our spouses, they'd be like, "Oh, thank God for this COVID. You know, at least we get to see him."
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know, because we all live very, very busy lives, right? And we're all workaholics, right? Um, so I think that's been a plus. A lot more time with the children. Um, but of course, you can only do that if you also have separation within your house. Like if you don't have a separate section of the house, which is your own section, then I'm sure you're gonna fight, right? And you're gonna because you're not used to it. You're used to being independent, right? So I think that has been an advantage. But I think mental sanity is also being mentally in the right state is also very important. Um, and I think many of us have taken measures around. I can say this about myself as well. Both in terms of listening to the right things, as opposed to, for example, watching Netflix and videos. Like I don't do any of that. It's just such a waste of time, right? I've been watching a lot of like um, YouTube sort of documentaries or talks or podcasts that I would never listen to, or inspirational sort of videos that I would never listen or watch into, right? But what I do now is, I hate wearing like a headset or like an ear set. So I have a mini tiny speaker that I carry in one hand, and it's connected with a Bluetooth with a podcast or like a audiobook. And I take an hour or an hour and a half every like 2-3 days, and I run with it. And I'd never run in my life. Like, I'm 41, right? And I've been extremely unhealthy most of my life. I've never really exercised. I hate going to the gym. I feel too confined in there. I live in a very hot city, very humid, sweaty. I enjoy treks, but there are no mountains around here, right? So, I have now taken that chance to sort of mix my learning, my mental learning with my physical run, right? And the good thing about COVID is it's allowed the beach to be empty. So now I can run on the beach with no one around, which is beautiful.
Great, Munib. Just to add on that, life is the way I put it, life is a long run that we all are, running and chasing different things in life. We're all very busy, but I think the mental health of anyone, that's very important. With COVID, I think we all ended up doing things that we never did before. There were all different things that we focused on actually. We must have done it, but we didn't have the time to focus on it. Let's say if you talk about health, you now have all the time in the world. I think it's for everybody now. Everybody who said, I'm so busy to go to now gyms are closed, but what do you do now? You're sitting at home. Yeah, you want to get ready. You want to take a shower. You want to get ready if you're working from home. You want to look good. At the same time, you're not socializing. You spend time with your kids. You do all the basic activities, but you have to structure your day. The day has to be structured. There has to be a workout time. Like what I do is similar to yours, we go for a run for an hour. It basically takes your stress out, and you get out of this mode where you can relax and think about your day or your life, or become positive. I would say you become positive, and you take up the next day very positively, without stress. So I think staying healthy, working out, exercising, going for a run, it all adds to your mental health and positivity. It's very important to do that, because this is the time to do it. If you're not going to do it, I agree with you. If you did not utilize this time to your own benefit, then when are you going to do it?
Absolutely. There's so much negativity right now. I mean, there's so much bad news, right? Forget about COVID. Look at politics. look at the economy. You know, all the news is bad, right? Like every day you're jabbed with something bad, right? Whether it's, you know, whether it's basically, for example, if you're in the US, like, you know, it's about race. Now race is suddenly a problem, you know. And if you're in Pakistan, it's about government policies, you know, fuel prices, you know, or just, you know, one bad news after another bad news. And so you've just got to like somehow bear this. It's gonna go. It's gonna get better, right? Um, and
Yeah, I
and
think we've got these last 10 minutes. I think, Hassan, we've got 10 minutes.
Yeah, we've got 10 minutes. So, Usman, can you also add what's the, I mean, I wanted to ask you to, what's the biggest opportunity you got out of this pandemic situation? And then second, how are you focusing on your health during this time?
Yeah, similar to what Munib said. I mean, taking time out for your health is really important, and that's what I'm doing as well. You know, with all the gyms closed, you know, it's not too easy to just walk into a country club and just go for a run. You know, so you have to take time out, be creative. So I built, I had a home gym, but you know, it was sort of not being used. So I've reignited that and now using that, dedicating an hour of my time to that every day. The biggest opportunity, again, are products. Like I said, when we made the budget for 2020, you know, we didn't have these products on the radar. And now we've got a whole new bunch of products that are related to COVID. So our biggest opportunities are those products that we're working on now. And, I'm just going to go through these questions we're getting. Asad Tariq has sent this questions for the panel, which I believe is the $1 million question. When, in your opinion, would we be able to get to some sense of normalcy? I think that is a question that probably no one can answer right now. But I think the new normal that he's saying, what would it look like? I think change is the only constant, is what we talk about a lot. I think it is more prevalent than ever. I think we're going to keep on changing. I mean, change is going to be rapid. Change is going to be fast. The new normal is not going to be what we are used to now, but we cannot predict that new normal right now. If we try and predict that, we're trying to predict some constant. Right now, change is the only constant. I mean, we want to get in a safe zone where we know that, you know, things are not going to change, but sadly that has been expedited now. So I think the new normal is just to be flexible. Know your strengths and just be flexible and like I said, take advantage of these disruptions in the value chain. What do you say to that, Munib?
yeah, I mean, so in terms of, listen, everyone is just, you know, coming up with their own assumptions, right? So if you ask me for my assumption around when will this be over, I'd say in about 3 months, things will start to get better, right? And if they start to get better or start to get back to normal, I think things will start booming again, November, December onwards. And the reason why I think they're going to start growing again is because the cost of capital is so low. You know, there's like this, you know, from Western businesses to even businesses in our part of the world. You know, if you have access to capital, there is just so much capital that is available for cheap. That capital will need to figure out where to deploy itself, right? And you know, right now you're seeing it being deployed into stock markets, which again is, you know, it adds no value. But I think in the next 5 to 6 months, this capital will start to find its way in more productive things. You know, so it's a good time to plan. It's a great time to prepare yourself. If you have capital, then it's a good time to plan how to deploy it, you know. But the new normal will be more guarded consumers. And so you've got to think about, like, what happened to China after SARS? Think about it, right? Like, even as early as like last year, I would go to international airports and see Chinese travelers with masks. So are masks going to be the future for travel or commuting 2, 3, 4 years from now? Yeah, most likely. You know, so I think a good precedence to look at would be probably countries that were impacted by either Ebola or by SARS, and see how they've because history repeats itself. People repeat themselves, right? And that will be the new normal. And you've got to figure out what opportunities there are in the new normal. And everybody has, for their own industries, they have their own opportunities.
Thanks, Manib. And there's another question from Ali Gul. He's asking, any other tech tools for a post-COVID world similar to Ding Talk?
Yeah, so I mean, listen, we very actively use Google Sheets. And the reason why, like everyone says, oh, Google Sheets is just like Excel. No, it's not. And the reason it's not is that our entire database is actually on Google's BigQuery. So what we do is, Google Sheets make any sort of like question that we write, any if statement that we write, any formula that we write, it automatically pulls from our database. So on the one side, you've got this ERP that is connected to a database live, one, and two, it is something that every employee of yours can access and share. You can control the rights. You can control what they can see, what they can't see, whether they can edit, comment, whatever. So I would highly advise that you go and try and access either free tools or basically very inexpensive tools for your organizations, because you can't we have been using Slack in the past. We've been paying not a lot of money, but I think about $9-10 per user, but like at hundreds of users, that's a cost. Why would we want to incur that cost? Like going forward, the plan is, if there's a free version, leverage it. If not, try and tweak it. Don't pay for things unless you absolutely have to, right? And to be candid, technology, there are many, many opportunities there. You don't have to go for things like Microsoft Teams. It's a terrible software. I mean, frankly, like all these schools are using it, and I'm like, why are they using it? Just because they think it's Microsoft? It's a terrible software, right? It's so clunky and it's so complicated. Most people don't know about it. But I would advise Ding Talk for an organization, also because it's free.
Yeah. I mean, coming back to free, I would just like to add for the audience, many institutions like Harvard and, London Business School, all the online free course at Harvard, all these topics that are so interesting and there's a lot of learning. I think the most important thing is during this time, you have to keep yourself learning and growing. That's very important. Big Mike from Nigeria, Nigeria, has a question for all of us. While it may be impossible to know each twist and turn the future might hold, what are the skills you have used to maneuver thus far?
Cockiness. You've got to be cocky. I mean, listen, we as entrepreneurs, we're aggressive people. Okay? Yeah. We're aggressive, whether we're verbally aggressive or we're aggressive in the risks that we take. You can't stop that. You can't. If you're drowning, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna try and make last-ditch efforts to swim, or are you gonna you're drowning and just try and die, right? So I think to maneuver through these times, you need to be healthier, you need to be in a better frame of mind, and you need to listen also to talks on YouTube or podcasts and get positivity rather than basically watching news about politics or watching news about the pandemic. Just stop. Yeah. Because statistics, by the way, say that if you watch news for a few minutes in a day, there's a 30% probability of you classifying your day as being bad just by listening to news. Stop it, because the news business is the business of provoking you, because that's how they get your attention. That's how they build addiction. It's a game. It's just like Facebook. Facebook is a game, you know. All these games are there to retain your attention so that your eyeballs can be there for advertising. And if you don't understand that, then you are fooling yourself and your business and not being faithful to your own business.
I mean,
Yeah. And just to add to that, I think, like Munib said, discipline. Again, I mean, it's harder now. I mean, watching TV or watching news, it was always a bad idea. COVID or no COVID, but see, now people have more screen time, so it's a little hard, right? I mean, now you can't go out, you can't do anything, you're at home, so people are watching more TV, people are on the phone doing Zoom, so now they're going to log on to Facebook, they're going to spend time. So you have to be more disciplined now than before, because while enhancing the digital presence, you have to make sure you stay away from these distractions, like Munib said. So discipline, again, is key as well, one of the key skill sets now.
Just to add to that, negativity actually is, I think, the biggest enemy of growth. You have to stay positive. And for that matter, I think the mental health, as I mentioned earlier as well, as Muni was mentioning as well, you have to stay mentally positive and do whatever you want to make that happen. May that be a morning run, or may that be a good hearing of YouTube or an abstract or a documentary. I think staying positive is the best way to maneuver during these tough times. Muni, I'll move on to the next question. If you were advising to the Prime Minister, what steps would you undertake?
Yeah, I mean, listen. I think all leaders today are under intense pressure. They're under intense pressure because they were voted in to bring prosperity to the masses, and yet the masses are losing their incomes, they're losing their liberty, and are now increasingly becoming more and more dependent, as if this was a socialist system, as if there was socialism and there was the state to provide for them. Now, the reality is democracy has not been set up, or capitalism hasn't been set up for the state to father their countrymen. I mean, people give a lot of flack to communism, but listen, the reality is, whether you're in China or in Vietnam, the leadership there thinks of themselves as parents to their children, right? And if you look at Scandinavia and you look at Germany and these countries, I mean, they've come with a complex hybrid between capitalism and socialism, where they extract very, very high taxes, which is generally bad for capitalism. But in lieu of that, they give very, very high quality education and healthcare to their citizens, which doesn't happen in the US. In the US, if you don't have money, you're not going to get good healthcare, you're not going to get good education, right? So unfortunately, in Pakistan, we haven't figured out who to follow. On the one side, we sometimes we oscillate in trying to follow the Asian model. Sometimes we try and follow the European model. Sometimes we try and follow the American model. And so I think all of this is an evolution. So I think I can understand why leaders like our Prime Minister may be also a little confused as to what exactly to do, because there are too many decision makers. The problem in the current state within our country, and I would say in all current democracies, there are just too many decision makers, right? Imagine if, like, in your organization, in your company, instead of you being the ultimate decision maker, there were 7 to 10 other people who were also making the decisions at the same time. You would step on each other's toes, right? So if there were a CEO, and if basically the Prime Minister was actually a CEO, and he could actually basically run the business as a father, what would I recommend? I would recommend 2-3 things. I would recommend a slash on taxes on mobile top-ups, so that mobile top-ups can be used as a parallel currency, as a digital currency, as opposed to cash. And the reason that's important is that if you slash the tax on it, today the tax in Pakistan is 30%. And if you take the tax to, let's say, 2%, and you take off the 2%, you take 1%, or let's say you take that 2% and you just say, let this be rolled over every time this currency is traded, right? You trade it 50 times and it becomes 100. 2 times 50 is 100. So you will automatically multiply the taxation you extract because you are part of the revolving money in the country. Today, you can't do that with cash. If I give Usman 100 rupees, Usman gives Hassan 100 rupees, Hassan, by the time Hassan gives me back that 100 rupees, that 100 rupees is still 100 rupees. It's 100 rupees in cash. The state hasn't made a penny on it, on that hard note of currency. So that's one thing I would do. Right? I would immediately change the taxation on mobile top-up so it's used as a parallel currency so that people can use it to buy things that they would otherwise buy in hard cash. The second thing I would do is absolutely slash imports by astronomically increasing taxes on 2 things. One is cooking oil. Okay, we are addicted $2 to $3 billion spent in importing cooking oil from Malaysia and Indonesia. Okay, and it is not productive. It's not like furnace oil or steel that you import into the country to basically evolve into a fully finished product. What is this evolving into? It's evolving into your body, which is going down in waste, right? So I would absolutely increase the taxes on any cooking oil that's imported so that the people of this country start looking for alternatives. I mean, our great-grandparents and our grandparents didn't import this much oil. They didn't put this much oil in their food, right? What did they do? Did they survive? Absolutely. For thousands of years, right? The second thing I would do is absolutely quadruple or 10x the duties on tea. Again, non-productive. What do you drink tea for? You know, for waking up? Like, come on, like what did our grandparents do? Did they have this much tea? You import, almost $1 billion worth of tea as well. So if you're trying to think of how to promote, local initiatives, then stop these imports. And the third, and perhaps most important thing I would do is I would increase the taxes on property. And I know you may disagree. I mean, some of you come from industries where you benefit from that. But I think it's absolutely terrible. Because what is happening in a country like ours is that people put their savings into property, which does not generate anything, right? And in reality, what needs to happen is that the state needs to foster or prod banks to come up with mortgages or collateralized backed securities or securitize that sector so that people only put, say, 20% of their money into property. The rest is financed through financial institutions, with lower interest rates, and that people's own capital is deployed into income generation things like small businesses, right? So that they can manufacture things, so that they can start businesses, right? And let the remaining 80% of the capital in properties be deployed by fake money. And what is fake money? Fake money is digital money. It's just printed, or it's just digitally available in the world, right? What do you think the US treasuries are? It's not real money. It's just basically a monetary value. So we need to figure out better ways to manage the economy. And I think the economy is still being managed by people who are just economics majors or people with a focus on economics. And in reality, they need to get people with economics to work with people who are investment bankers, And I say investment bankers because investment bankers are more creative, They're not like auditors or accountants. They're more creative, right? So we need to get economists to start working with investment bankers to drive this country forward, because I don't see any of these measures being undertaken.
I mean, Munib, advising the Prime Minister, you would tell him, just to sum it up, that we should focus on less imports. We should appreciate our currency. We should go into creativity. We should do our own inventions and manufacturing. We should, may that be small or big. I think that's in itself is a good way to boost the economy, increase employment, and to generate revenue. I agree with you that if there's no turnover, by the time the money gets around, if there's no turnover, there's no collection on tax. They don't make any money off it. So if there has to be a rotation, if there's no rotation, if there is no turnover, if there's no changing of hands, so nobody's making any money. If the business is going to run, if the enterprise is going to run, that is when you're going to make money off it. I mean, even the government, for that matter, that may be FBR, that may be at the import stage, So that's something, I totally agree with that. We have to come to local manufacturing, local products, like look at these vehicles, Honda and Toyota. They have escalated by 100% over the last 7-8 months. It's the same product. Why? Currency devaluation. I think we need to make our currency stronger. We need to focus on exports. We need to have our own innovation. We need to ban imports, basically, for now. And that's something that we need to focus on. Because a product which is so expensive, and the same product you're getting in the US or in Dubai or in London for half the price, what is your value for money? Where do you stand in terms of the global economy? So, Usman, I would like to also ask you, what is the one thing or a few other things that you would advise the Prime Minister on to act upon or to implement during these COVID times to improve the economy?
Well, again, the one thing that I would, being a manufacturer, would say, again, focus on manufacturing, get the flows back to manufacturing. Like Munib said, savings are sitting in stocks, savings are sitting in real estate. That money needs to be funneled to the manufacturing sector. That would be creating jobs. Secondly, exports. Like Munib is hinting towards bringing imports down, I would say this is the time where you need to start giving all the facilities, all of the measures that you could offer to the industry. Cut down the red tape, cut down the bureaucratic hurdles, and get to exports. Make your products competitive globally. And like you said, the cars, the quality of products, anything that's manufactured here needs to be enhanced to a level where it could be exported. I was reading today that for the first time, Pakistan's going to be exporting, a lot of the products that it did not before, like microwaves. Pakistan had never exported microwaves, and they're going to do that for the first time. That's an opportunity that we didn't have. But again, we have to push for exports. So that would be my biggest advice to the PM.
Great. Thanks, Usman. And I think we're little over an hour. We should wrap it up now. I would like to thank Munib for taking out the time and joining us and sharing your comments and your thoughts. I think we've done pretty much, we've gone over all the Q&A session. We've shared some questions from the attendees, participants. And Usman, thank you for joining as well. I know you're a busy person in this pandemic at the forefront. You're busy saving people's lives, making those products, and keeping it up. So thanks a lot,
guys.
Everybody.
Thanks for the opportunity, and safe. I wish everyone safety and prosperity over the next quarter. I hope things come back to normal.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone, stay safe. Take care.
Have a great day.